Good day. My name is Joseph Giacomin. I'm a professor of human-centered design based at Brunel University in London. And thank you so much for inviting me to present this talk. It's a topic I'm very passionate about, very keen about. It's about design for meaning, something that's gaining quite a bit of traction and interest these days. So without further ado, I'll just jump right in. So design for meaning, what is meaning? Let's clarify a little bit the words we're using, because in design quite often we talk about meaning, but we're not necessarily all the time as designers fully clear, or marketers or innovation managers fully clear what we mean. Meaning, the significance of something, the purpose, the motive, the intention behind it. And it's important to distinguish two different aspects. In language, meaning is a cat is the thing with the four legs and the hair and the whiskers. The meaning in terms of the value it has for somebody and why it's important to them is actually the motive or intention. So it's very important to understand meaning can refer to language and what's what. Meaning, though, in the sense we're going to talk about today, is a lot more about why it's important to you and what's the reason for that. So types of meaning. If you troll the literature of philosophy, linguistics, psychology, sociology, design, engineering, science, physics, whatever, you tend to find that in terms of macro categories, you tend to fall into three rough headings. And just about everything we can talk about falls into these three. The first is function. At the end of the day, there's some things we do because they're useful, getting to work in the morning on the underground, reading the newspaper to find out what's going on. Some things, they just need to be done. And there isn't a whole lot more beyond that. And much of what we do, much of innovation is about things that are new abilities and new functions to do things. And we're full of, we're surrounded by these types of innovations around us. Swiss Army knife, great example as a metaphor. Lots and lots of different things in there that you can do. You make a whole business out of offering different functions. The meaning is just basically that you can do these things. Tools, spanners, tools, vehicles in a commercial sense, a very cheap, inexpensive vehicle to get you from A to B. Chairs like the Thonet chair, from the last century. These are things which satisfy dominantly a functional meaning. And then today, perhaps they have artistic or historical or social value, but they started out as being practical. Band-aids, early 20th century innovation, realizing that cuts and bruises on people only come in certain sizes and shapes. Calculators. These are all examples of things which they don't really need to be there if you didn't have to do these things. So it's functional meaning. Another class of meaning is ritual. The certain actions, and the word action is key here, the certain actions we do which send messages. They have what is referred to as ritualistic or semiotic content to them. Sitting at the water cooler, chatting with a colleague or chatting up someone. These are ritualistic behaviors. They're things that go well beyond simply doing something. You're sending a message by the manner in which you do it. And the world is full of examples of things which aren't really just functional. It's much more than that. It's about the message it sends. Do we really need a coffee or a cappuccino poured from an Electra, from a Milanese machine, which is totemic, which looks like a religious icon more than a coffee maker? No, it's not necessary functionally, but the message it sends about the quality of the coffee and so forth. Do we really need to survive cosmetics, the whole cosmetic industries, because we aspire to do more than just the minimum functionally? Do we need to have our hair styled at a salon where the chairs and the mirrors and the lightings and the interior design decor is so amazing that it's almost a religious experience? Of course not. It's not indispensable, but it's pleasant, it's enjoyable, it sends messages about who we think we are, who we wish to be. It's ritualistic in nature. A very good example of ritual, some years ago, a design concept done by a young person here in the UK, the English ritual of toasted bread in the morning. The individual made a machine that you can put your bread in, and there's some lasers scanning it, and very slowly it emerges from the bottom onto your plate in a nice toasted brown color. Enjoying the idea of the breakfast ritual as we practice it in the United Kingdom. That's another great example. Jewelry and fashion are very typical examples. And one of the ultimate ritualistic things, personalization. There's a whole industry based on personalizing artifacts or services around your interests and needs. And quite often it takes the form of simply stamping your name on it, something that goes back many thousands of years in human history. Personalization in many cases not necessary, but it's enjoyable, it has advantages, it sends messages. And then finally, the third category of meaning, which I'm using the word myth, but it's difficult to find the best optimal word in the English language for this. Myth, in the sense we're using it here, is a traditional story, something that has a sequence, it has a beginning, has an end, it has a middle, and it has some value to you from a moral or a practical or some other point of view. It's something that teaches you something, it's something that leaves you something. It's not just a form of entertainment in the Hollywood sense of the thing, it's something that provides you some sort of teaching and learning and understanding of your life and nature. Myth is another form of meaning. There's many instances of things which provide us narratives and stories, but they don't necessarily have a strong functional element to it. For example, sunglasses made to imitate the sunglasses of the first aviators who in the 1920s finally flew their airplanes high enough to get above the clouds and needed glasses to shield themselves from the strong light. It's a style, it's a fashion, it's a manner of wearing glasses, which sends message that you associate with the story of the first aviators. Cowboy boots, you associate with some of the individualistic values that are portrayed in Hollywood and so forth about cowboys. Sport motorcycles, you aspire to drive and to be a bit like your heroes of MotoGP. Watches that are based on underwater submarine heroes from the last major war, Batman, and all kinds of superhero paraphernalia. We know that the industry of the paraphernalia surrounding major Hollywood films actually brings in more revenue than the film itself, because so many people wish a little emblem, a little symbol, something to associate with, which reminds them of the original experience and which says something that they like certain values of the hero of the story. And finally, at the top of the slide, the example from Ferrari. This is the interior of a relatively recent vehicle. On the steering wheel on the lower right is something that in Italian we call the manettino, the little handle. And it's a switch which switches between the car being mostly driven by you in the first position, and then as you switch through, you increase the degree of automation and automated control to handle this very powerful, difficult to drive sports car. Now, the Manettino is not necessarily ergonomically, from a design perspective, from a human-centered design perspective, it's not necessarily the simplest, easiest, best, most intuitive way to control the setting of how much automation the vehicle helps you with as the driver, but it's imitating the little handle. It's exactly the same handle that's on the Formula One race car. So we buy the vehicle also because it has so many symbolic connections with the Formula One races, and so many people are passionate about racing, and this is a way of connecting with that whole reality of the race world. When talking about meaning, we can chop it up into three types, and we can ask ourselves, our digital products, which of the types is most relevant to it when we're setting out to design or perfect it. It's important to keep in mind meaning with human beings is very rarely an absolute. killing someone is a bad thing. That's a fairly absolute meaning. Most people would agree with that. But the vast majority of things are less drastic than that, and they have a variety of meanings. And meaning thus changes somewhat with context. On this slide is one of the examples from the many hundreds of studies which suggest that, the background setting, the cultural context, the location. Are you in the city? Are you in the country? Where are you using the digital platform? Who are you? What's your daily routine? Much of this affects how you interpret the meaning of the experience and the interaction, the interface you're dealing with. And when it comes to meaning, there's many, many hundreds of proper academic studies which suggest that meaning can change at times dependent on gender. Meaning can change at times with respect to a person's age. The young person has no time for philosophy. The older person has no time for anything other than philosophy, an idea that goes back thousands of years. As you get older, your interests change a little bit. The meanings of things can be a bit different to you. And certainly culture. We're all aware of the fact that moving from one part of the world to another, some things that we thought were very likable, intuitive, and enjoyable in one place could be working out to be less so in a different location. Another characteristic of meaning, which is very important from a business point of view, very important with digital services and platforms, and very important also with traditional manufactured artifacts, is the fact that your business will be producing a platform or an artifact whose meaning probably will change with time. And it's absolutely important as senior managers to discuss and come to some conclusions about where you are at the current point in time with meaning. For example, meanings can move in one direction from being myth or some sort of aspirational thing or toy or system, a lifestyle choice. It can move very quickly to becoming a daily ritual for people on a day-to-day basis that everyone more or less starts to engage with it. And then eventually it could become just totally functional. So the three macro categories of meaning, and anything in this world probably is a slight mixture of probably one mostly and a second one to some extent. Most things can move through this kind of a situation. The motor vehicle is a great example. I cite a lot of physical artifacts because they're easy to visualize and see in a person's everyday life. The motor vehicle started out as some sort of a magical, mystical toy for wealthy people who had the opportunity to try this new experience and run around town with this new invention. It eventually became a ritual, saying something about what class you belong to, what kind of profession you do. The doctor of the village had a car type thing. And then eventually it becomes fully commoditized and functional as life changes. Everybody needs one to get to work. So this is an example of a migration of meaning from an initial heroic stage to a final commoditized stage fairly rapidly in about a century. A similar thing can be shown in the opposite direction with things like eyeglasses, lens wears, various things we wear every day along with our clothing. Meaning in the case of eyewear has changed from being functional through a ritualistic phase to being today very much myth. We know that in ancient times, such as Roman and Greek times, they had lenses, they had them in their pockets. They wouldn't pull them out because it would indicate you're ill, you're sick, you can't see well. As the Industrial Revolution came along, eyewear became very common because it could be mass produced at a reasonable price. The eyewear then became an everyday reality, and people started differentiating and showing their own personal style and lifestyle by choosing eyewear of different colors, shapes, and sizes. Today, we're all familiar that on the streets of London, there's lots of people walking around with eyewear which has no lens in it. They have 20/20 vision, perfect. They have no need whatsoever for eyewear, but they're wearing it as a fashion statement. They're wearing it as a statement of who they are, what they aspire to. So this is an example in the other direction of something that started to some extent as a functional and then moved on to a commoditized stage and a ritual stage. And now today is very much, for many people, not everyone, it's still a necessity for many, but for many people, it's an object of myth or of semiotic content. It's sending messages. That's its main task. So what can we say about the issue of meaning from a management perspective? What can we say about meaning from a product or a service perspective? As designers, what should we be asking as questions in the very first stages of our activity before we invest hundreds or thousands or maybe even millions of pounds on developing a new product or a new platform? The first type of question we need to ask ourselves is, are we going to be leveraging, pulling the levers in the minds of the public, or are we going to be leveraging a traditional existing known metaphor? A car is a car, an eyeglass is an eyeglass, shoes are shoes. There's certain things which have traditional pre-existing meanings associated with them. And if we're going to largely, mostly, base our product or our system or a service on something that people have a familiarity with as well to some degree, we got to be careful not to deviate too much in its characteristics or in the communication of it in our public campaigns from the traditional values which have been associated for many years with that thing. The other possibility is, it's not an incremental innovation as in pre-existing meaning. We may actually be talking with our new startup and our new business and our funky new opportunity. We may actually be talking about a totally new meaning, a disruptive innovation, not an incremental, not even a pushing the limits of incremental. It might be genuinely disruptive. If it's disruptive, we're talking about new meaning. If it's a new meaning, we don't want to be associated with previous meanings. We'll probably give it a name that no one's familiar with. We'll probably talk about characteristics of the product, system, or service, which no one has talked about at length on the television, in the media. We'll insist on highlighting the novelty and the new abilities, whether they be functional, ritual, or mythical, that this disruptive innovation brings to people, brings to the market. So if it's a pre-existing meaning, we have to choose, is it mostly functional, is it mostly ritual, is it mostly myth? Can we make sure that the metaphor, the set of characteristics and words and colors and shapes and functionalities, and from a digital point of view, are we leveraging the same underlying software technologies? Are we using the same databases? Are we using the same communication protocols? Are we sticking, at least to some degree, with the existing structures and meanings? If instead we're talking on the right-hand side of the diagram of the new meanings, we have to do what's called meaningfication. We have to look what's happening in society, what new technology or opportunity have we got now digitally that we couldn't do a few years ago? What element of lifestyle and value does it lock into? How do we connect the dots of these three things to give meaning to this new disruptive, strange innovation? And then let's talk about a new metaphor. Don't call it a car if it's an autonomous vehicle. Don't call it a cell phone if it's a personal assistant. Use names and colors and communication strategies which are appropriate. And then at the end of the day, if you've chosen which type of, which category you're in, new or existing, you've made your decisions about which of the traditional types of meaning you're going to use, or which combinatorial innovation connecting the dots of new characteristics you're going to use, you should be able then to get around to the product or service design specification and get on with the process of actually getting it done and tested and in the hands of the public. Examples, just to illustrate some of the variations that successful, highly successful commercial products and services that we all know and we're all familiar with, just to highlight how they might sit on a spectrum of meaning. First example, Instagram. Instagram is clearly very strong, even though that is not its only characteristic, but it's very strong in function. Instagram is not about making a community of people themselves and getting you to sign up to it. Instagram is about giving you a platform that's functional enough, flexible enough, simple enough to permit you to express yourself, to post up images, and to create that community. So Instagram is a facilitator, it's a functional tool, it's something that helps you to be who you want and create a community. It does have some of its own values and meanings associated with it, but to some degree, some of that's in the background. Alessi. Alessi is a very good example of something that started out as a commodity, a typical Northern Italian metal bashing company in the Po Valley, which was making pots and pans during the post-war economic miracle or economic boom. Comes a day when everybody has lots of pots and pans in their house and they're starting to run out of space. Alessi brings in designers, brings in people from the local village, brings in creatives, politicians, any kind of person from anywhere around the world, anybody they know has interesting ideas to discuss. They come to realize that these things can have symbolic or semiotic value. Here are examples of a few different ones. Putting something like this on your kitchen is an icebreaker, it's a conversation starter, it makes you happy, it makes a pleasant environment. And Anna G, the corkscrew at the top right-hand corner, is the ultimate example of a semiotic myth type situation. It has a smiling face. When the kitchen smiles back at you, there's something called mirror neurons in the human mind, which make you smile as well. It's an instinctive reaction of human beings. This is an ultimate example of not just design for meaning, but also human-centered design. We trigger a smile in people, and it makes them not just happier, but also healthier. There's plenty of proper studies to demonstrate, even from a medical point of view, that something in the kitchen that smiles, or a car whose face has a smile to it, does make you smile back, and it does have positive health benefits. Great example of myth. Amazon's a great website, very good prices, very well organized, great usability, simplicity, cleanliness, all the standard UX things. But from a digital perspective, it goes one step further, which is it is a friend. The first time you type in looking for something, a book or something, and it suggests you might enjoy this salsa music CD, and you've never bought music on the platform and you have no idea how it figured it out from simple statistics and algorithms that it has inside, you realize that Amazon knows you a little bit better than your own wife and kids do. They never gave you the salsa CD, that specific one for Christmas, but Amazon popped it up and suggested. So once you start to engage with Amazon as a facilitator, an agent, and a friend, they've got you, because you'd come to rely on the system as you would, to some extent, some of your friends. And then finally, Apple. Apple's a very good example of something that had a long journey. So there's so much that could be said about Apple. Apple clearly started out with functionality, simplicity, and some commodity aspects to it 30, 40 years ago. But Apple today means a lot more than that. It's clearly in the myth category. It's a way of life, it's a lifestyle that people buy it, not just for the data security and other convenient aspects, but also because it sends messages about who you are, what your lifestyle is, and what kind of person you are. And recent studies have suggested that Apple, if you showed the logo to someone in an MRI scanner and then look at the brain waves and the activities which are activated in the mind, Apple lights up the same sections of the brain which are involved with deep philosophical meaning that would have been lit up by religious symbols or family value symbols or other deep moral religious values. The Apple symbol is lighting up parts of the brain, and the studies have shown it consistently, which the General Motors symbol, the Fiat symbol, the Volkswagen symbol, the Android symbol did not light up those same brain areas. So it suggests at a neurological level the fact that there's a meaning that's very deep, very mythical, there's a narrative, and this transcends greatly its origins, which were clearly simple, practical tools for doing things. And I'll stop there. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to field a few questions. Covered a lot. I'm sure there's some doubts and interest that might make good discussion.